Spotlighting Hawaii's leaders.
We want to bring in Governor David E.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Lieutenant Governor, good morning. Thanks so much for joining us. Mayor Derek Kawakami.
Thank you so much, Senator, for being here.
Spotlighting the issues.
Where is the virus right now in our community?
How much is this overall going to cost the state?
How are you responding to the community's concerns? Talk about the level of citations that you guys are writing.
Spotlight Hawaii with Yenji Denise and Ryan Kalei Suji on the digital platforms of the Honolulu Star-Advertiser.
This episode of Spotlight Hawaii is brought to you by Long's Drugs.
Hello and good morning. Thanks for tuning in here on this Monday morning. We apologize for the delay. We ran into some technical issues, but we are here now live with you on the digital platforms of the Honolulu Star-Advertiser. Thanks for tuning in. Yenji, this morning we are catching up with someone from the Honolulu Police Department.
That's right. Chief Joe Logan is joining us live from HPD headquarters this morning to talk about some updates with the department. Let's bring him now. Good morning, Chief. Thanks for being here.
Aloha, good morning. Thanks for the opportunity.
Well, we always love seeing you, and we know we have a lot to get to this morning. I want to dive right into the gun issue because it is something that so many members of our community have been tracking. What can you tell us about how many permits have been requested and where you are in that process?
So we have to date almost 600 applicants that are in the process of receiving their license to carry. We've sent them back a letter once the chief's rules were approved through the mayor's office and myself. And so with that, there's some criteria that they need to meet. And once they meet that, then their application, their 90-day clock will start as they send in more data and want to continue this process.
Let's talk a little about just the overall, this topic and what we're seeing here. What can you tell us about, just any revised concealed carry permitting process, what this process now looks like moving forward, and how you ultimately want to manage this moving forward?
So really, the whole issue as it came about with the Supreme Court decision in New York has kind of altered the framework for the city and county of Honolulu and really the state of Hawaii and the future of license to carry amongst citizens that are qualified. And so how do we do that? So my role really is to balance the rights of the Second Amendment and what the Constitution says, what the Supreme Court ruling has decided, what the community in the realm of public safety, because we haven't done this for over 100 years in the state of Hawaii, how do we do this, right? So how does the city and county do this, balancing both? And so that's really my role as within the state law is the county police chief within the city and county of Honolulu. And so what we've added to or provided that our citizens to weigh this balance is asking that these individuals that want license to carry, what they would have to do is they already have a permit to acquire. We're going to reevaluate their background check, or not reevaluate, but update their background check, update their mental health assessments that they provided during their permit to acquire to buy their weapon in the first place. And then we're going to ask them to if they haven't recently, take a 4-hour class on gun safety, gun operations, and then the revised ordinances and the Hawaii revised statutes, chapter 134 on firearms, and then chapter 703, which is really about use of force justification. And so it's really updating the citizen that wants a license to carry on what Hawaii's laws mean, right? We are not a stand your ground state. So how does that affect or impact your ability if you're out with a concealed carry firearm? What can you and can't you do? And so we want them to understand that, and then to do a certification on a range, shooting at certain targets at certain distances within amount of time. And the time is really just to add stress, not to make them shoot a gun in 2 seconds or 6 seconds, but more so, how do they handle stress? Because if they have in fact ever pull out the firearm or brandish it in a manner to as they mean or deem necessary to protect other people and themselves, there's a lot of stress in that event. So that's really what this is about in trying to balance these two really difference of opinions. And so That's my role right now. And so as we progress through that, we also have a certification, a verification of instructors that we want to, they're certified by, say, a national organization that certifies firearms instructors. So they would present their class to us. We would take a look at that, validate that they are in fact a current member of this national organization and they're certified. And then they're certified to teach and provide this for our class and the range instruction.
600, given how big our state or our county is not a lot, but 600 is certainly more than we've ever seen. And so I'm just wondering what advice you have to citizens, because I'm sure, and I'd like you to talk also about any enhanced training you have for officers and what they're going to have to do as they start to encounter these individuals. But let's say I'm at a restaurant or walking down the street and I happen to notice that someone is carrying a gun. I know these are supposed to be concealed, but presumably, you could maybe see something. For the average citizen, I know for me personally, if I saw that, my inclination would be to cross the street, perhaps call the police. I mean, how are you advising the average citizen who is not carrying a weapon to behave if and when they interact with someone who is carrying one?
Well, great question, Yunji. And so I think we would ask that, if you see somebody out there who's obviously the concealed carry, and the definition of conceal means that you can't see it, or it's unrecognizable to the average person. In the event that it is noticed and you can see it, then I would ask you to call 911. And then what we would do as a police department is come to the scene and investigate. So we need, a lot of information of who the person, what they look like, a description of the person and a description of what you think you saw. And then we'll investigate from there.
We've spoken to the mayor on this platform about his thoughts on this, and one of the things that he had mentioned was just being able to limit the areas where guns are available or where guns can be used. Have you spoken to the mayor about his thoughts on this moving forward, just his overall plan, his vision for what he believes the guns should be used in, especially when it comes to restricting them in public spaces?
I've had discussions with the mayor, and I was at the city council meeting the other day or last week on Bill 57 on sensitive places. And right now I'm meeting with each of the city council members regarding that bill. I think by and large, even, we absolutely, believe in sensitive places that are logical in nature, such as government buildings, hospitals, schools, of all institutions, those where our keiki hang out at, such as museums or other activities where keiki can congregate, to keep them safe. So we want, those absolutely make sense. What becomes a little bit difficult for us on an enforcement level is when we're talking about private businesses, and then you're adding in the parking area, and if it's maybe in a shopping center or a shopping complex with multiple businesses, how is that going to impact our officers' ability to understand, who gave permission, who doesn't give permission? So that right now is what I'm trying to ascertain and work through. So those are the things that I'm worried about our officers. We already ask our officers to do a lot, and they're out there every day risking their lives and trying to enforce the law and do all the things that officers need to do. And then to add another one where they've got to decipher through something that may be confusing. So how do we clean this up? How do we make it so it makes sense to our officers? So it's easily, we can discern where people can and cannot.
And on that subject, you bring up an interesting point. Let's say there is a shopping center and there are businesses in there who say, you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to carry a weapon, or, you're picking up your kid from school and you need to go on campus. What do you advise those people who have the permit to do in that situation? Are they allowed to leave the weapon then in their vehicle? You can't predict all the places you need to go during the day. Presumably you would say, if you're going to that place, leave it at home. But if you need to stop and pick up your kid because they're sick at school, what do you do with your gun then?
So that's another dynamic to this whole thing, and how are we going to operate through that? So the way that the language in the law is written is really going to impact how we enforce. And are there avenues for exactly what you're saying, Yunji, providing that, hey, I didn't plan to bring my gun to this place, but my spouse called, they can't pick up the kid, I have to go pick them up. So how do we do that, and how that's going to operate is something I think we need to figure out as we further progress down this road of passing this sensitive places bill.
I want to bring in the question here. Heidi's asking the question of, can you ask if private businesses can prohibit guns in their establishments? What would you say to those restaurant owners, those store owners, who are wary of this and moving forward, how they manage this type of change in overall legislation, but also just overall policy that they can, really formulate on their own?
Yeah, so I think it's really up to the business owner, the person who runs that establishment, and how they want to have or don't have armed citizens in their property at that time. And so I think that's kind of where, if they're in a shopping area where, say, the store next door, I allow firearms in mine, but in my store I don't, or my restaurant I don't allow it. So we have to figure out how that's all going to impact, the average citizen. And so these are the discussions I'm having as I meet with the city council members to help our officers understand how that works. But, if you're an owner of a business and you don't want citizens to conceal carry in your establishment, then I think you'd have to let us know or let the public know how that happens. But how you do that is your business. And so we're still working through how that all works.
I mean, presumably, if you hold a notice, if you put up a sign, is that enough, or do you need, something else? Is there something that you would register with HPD? That does just seem like so much new ground in all of this.
It is. It's kind of it's a little all-encompassing. It's a little difficult to decipher your way through right now because there's all these what we call second and third order effects. If I make this decision, what are the other decisions that have to follow to make this all work? And so I want to make sure that when Bill 57 is passed in the future, how do we iron all those out so that it's least impactful, one, to the business, to the citizen, but more importantly to our officers and their safety.
Well, we know that this is a fluid process and there is a lot of discussion and debate that will continue on. So we will continue to stay posted on this, but look forward to future conversations we can have about this. Want to move on to some other things that are concerning and things that are happening within the department. One of the things, of course, is recruitment overall. If you can give us an update on how staffing has gone with HPD overall, if you guys were able to fill some of those vacancies, and moving forward, how are you looking to project filling some of those holes that you have within the department?
So we continue to recruit. We have about just shy of 3,000 applicants every year. And then through that and our processes of looking at the applicants, their background checks, their ability to physical fitness, their medical situation, and all of those, and factor on reducing that 3,000 to a number that our police academy can handle. So we do 6 academies a year now. And so every 2.5 months, we're starting a new class. And as people finish that process, they can get into the next class. And so it's pretty quick now. It's about 3.5, 4 months. Used to be almost a year long. And so we've whittled that down. So it's not really the number of applicants. We still attract, a large population of people that are interested in law enforcement. And then if you went to the movies over the next month or so, we have a commercial that's at one of the movie theaters that is out there attracting, those individuals that are interested. And then, of course, we're increasing our presence on social media to attract those interested in police and law enforcement. So we continue. I think we have to 92 recruits for this year. We're projected to have one more class starting, as a matter of fact, started today. So we have another class of 18 that are coming in. And so with these smaller classes, we keep the attrition down because it's more of a one-on-one. we can have a few instructors, talking with a small group of the officers if there's any issues or concerns they're having as they go through this 6.5-month recruitment school. The other thing, but you're bringing up about filling vacancies is the number of people that may retire or leave the department for mainland departments. There are outside departments coming to Honolulu for the name of diversification to find Pacific Islanders to attract them into law enforcement on the mainland. And so we have lost a few officers that way too. But by and large, it's almost a zero-sum game. We have as many retirees or those leaving the department as we do have coming in. So exactly, filling vacancies it's a fluctuating thing, because once you finish your year of training, the 6.5 months academy, and another 3 to 4 months of training with officers to learn the job actually on the streets, and then you get sent to a patrol element or assignment after that. That's when your number counts into the vacancy or non-vacancies. So it's even though we've got 92 in the pipeline, those 92 don't actually hit. They'll hit at different times as they graduate and progress through the year of probation into what is an assignment. And so right now my focus is those almost 90% of those are going into patrol. And so we're going to fill our patrol vacancies first. And while the other divisions and the divisions within the department may be a little short at times, but we're working through that. And then we still have to promote for the vacancies of those that we lose that are in senior level ranking.
Given all of that fluctuation in all of those different areas, what is the need right now? I know when you took the helm, it was around 300 officers short of where you'd like to be. Have those numbers, given that you said that there are people who leave for greener pastures on the continent, perhaps, or who retire, what are you looking at? Is it still around 300?
When I took over, it was actually around 350. It went as high as, I think, 390 or 380. Now we're back down to 364. So it's one of those moving things that changes based on when these officers move from the training construct into what we call a regular assignment. And so that's where it fluctuates. So at any given month, it could go up, it could go down. But right now we're plateaued around 360 vacancies. And so we're holding, it's not what we want to do. But unfortunately, people have done this job for 25, 30 years, some even almost 40 years. And at that point in time, they're ready to, find retirement and enjoy life after being, in a stressful job for that long of time. They've earned the right to retire. And so, I want to help them with that, and as they progress through the department and let them leave the department with the rewarding desire of having served their community for a very long time, a significant number of years of their life, right? So we want people to leave at the department when they're ready to go. So
one of the other things that, of course, that police officers have had to work with and the HPD has had to work with the county on is this development of the CORE program and dealing with the homeless population. If you can give us an update on just efforts there, the communication that has been happening within those who are managing that program, and what you think long-term this CORE program will mean for the requirements of what officers are asked to do when dealing with those types of individuals.
So the Emergency Management Services manages a CORE program. We support them when they go out to calls. And so they're working right now in the downtown Chinatown area. And they've got smaller operations working in District 6 in Waikiki as there are, I guess, large pockets of homeless or those going through mental crisis or just living on the streets for whatever reason they are at the current time. So CORE is working very diligently at that. Our officers that are in those areas are doing on a regular basis referrals, helping either direct them toward CORE or direct them to a HONU program or to other outlets that are out there to shelter in place or shelter places that can help. And how do we reach all of those people? If you look at District 6 right now, they did just in the month of September during the initial phases of Safe and Sound, they've done 50 outreaches. They gave about 180 or 80 warnings on homeless people, maybe sit, lie rules, park rules, bus stop rules, and then they've issued a number of citations and arrests, not just of homeless, but of all people in Waikiki. And so year to date, they've done about 1,200 referrals with the homeless through our community policing team just in Waikiki alone. And so we're trying to make a difference in helping the emergency management services, the CORE program, as well as the city and county of Honolulu in helping these people improve their lives.
Mm-hmm. I know we ended guns a minute ago, but I want to bring this question in from Wayne. And he's asking, can you limit the type of weapons that can be concealed carry, i.e. no ACPs, only revolvers? I'm interested to know, just expanding on Wayne's question, what kind of guns will be allowed under this permit and what won't?
So we've restricted that. I mean, we're not telling them what kind of firearm they can use, but it's a firearm like a handgun. It's not a long gun like a rifle. And so it'd be very difficult for you to conceal a rifle on your person. And so what we're asking them to do is, we're not directing, it could be a Derringer, it could be, any caliber of weapon that you have legally purchased, and that you have a permit to acquire, then you could get a concealed carry permit for that.
We are running out of time, but one of the things that we just want to quickly bring up is an update on the uniforms overall. We spoke to SHOPA representatives who said this was one of their top priorities that they heard from officers within the department, just about getting new uniforms updated. We believe, and what we've heard is that there are some that are in testing right now. Can you give us any updates in terms of updating the uniforms that officers are, will be wearing moving forward?
So we're looking at what I'm wearing right now is what we call a Class A uniform. We're looking at what we probably refer to as a Class B, a more working uniform for everyday activities other than presentations and other events that you may need this uniform for when you're out on patrol. We've had the program comes through officers, they submitted a request to look at a new uniform. We took a look at that as administration. We, said that's a great idea. Let's take a look at that. And so now they've been out testing. I believe they have 2 different uniforms they were testing at first. And now they wanted to bring in another 2 different uniforms. And so based off of that, it's going to extend the program a little bit we want to make sure that the individuals that are running the tests are the same individuals, making sure they're testing all the uniforms so that the assessment they're giving is, accurate across the board, and it's not just individual perception. Having somebody different test the uniform has to be the same person testing all the uniforms. And so we're still working through that. As soon as the final assessment is done and the report comes up to us, then we'll take a look at that. And I think we're in favor of some kind of thing, so we're going to take a look at that and then approve that as soon as we can.
The end of the year is a very reflective time as we sort of look back and then look forward into 2023. I'm interested to know, now that you've been at the helm for some time, what are your reflections on your time there so far? How has your relationship with the various captains and lieutenants, how is that going? I know that the last time you were on here, you said that you made it a point to call every officer on their birthday, which is pretty busy considering how big your department is. But, how have you, deepened those relationships, and what is your sort of resolution, if you will, for the department in the new year?
Well, the department, I've gone out to meet all the patrol units or elements, the districts across the island. We're working on the divisions that make up the support of the patrol elements. And I've, basically run into quite a lot of people just coming in and out of the station. And then as we made our rounds out and about, and it's a great department. The people in here want to serve. They serve for a purpose higher than themselves. They want to do something positive for the community. And that's really why they're in the department. And that's really refreshing to know that that's the theme that most of the people here in the department have, whether you're sworn or unsworn. That's your reason for serving in the capacity that you do. And so, our lieutenants and sergeants, that's the heart of patrol. And that's where, they guide our officers that are growing through the department and looking for promotion opportunities. And so they provided them an opportunity to coach, teach, and mentor their young officers as they move throughout the department. And so that's kind of a pride thing with supervisors to be able to train that next generation of supervisors. And like I said, when I first came in, I'm already looking for my replacement. Not that I'm in a desire to leave quickly, but I have to make sure that there's a pool of people within the department that are very qualified and capable of taking the chief's position when my time is up. And so those are the things that we look forward to. Those are the things I've asked the department to look at. We're almost done with the strategic plan. We're putting the final touches on. Not quite ready for prime time yet, but almost there. And so, for me, it's really refreshing. The police department is like I said, it's a wonderful organization. It's moving in the right direction as far as community policing orientation and 21st century policing techniques and observations. So how do we continue that? How do we, we're still working with changing the mindset from the warrior mindset to more of a guardian mindset. And so while that doesn't mean that the officer doesn't have the capabilities and responsibilities that they have to be the police officer to enforce the laws, but a slight change in mindset as to they're protecting everyone, even the one that may be perpetrating crime, to make sure that everyone can go home at the end of the evening. Now, somebody might go to jail first, but in the end, they all get to go home. And so how do we do that as a police department? Those are the things we're working on. It's very refreshing that that attitude permeates the police department, and we'll continue to push that.
What's your Joe Logan? Thank you so much for spending some time with us here on this Monday morning and for updating us on all the things that are happening at HPD. We appreciate your time here this morning, and we look forward to more updates as we enter the new year. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Aloha.
Good to see you. Thank you. Well, interesting, Ryan. That was a really interesting thought that he ended on there, that idea of shifting from a warrior mindset to a guardian mindset. And you really hear about the culture that he is trying to perpetuate at HPD. On a practical level, he is facing a lot. Of course, he talked about all those vacancies that are still there with attrition and people, getting recruited to the mainland. And then also, of course, just people naturally retiring. They are still over 300%, over 300 vacancies there at HPD. They are making some progress with restructuring the recruitment classes, but still a lot to do there in trying to get more officers. His focus, he said, is on patrols, and that's where they're doing the most staffing right now. And then, of course, there's the issue of gun permits.
Yeah, the concealed carry law and all the changes that are happening there, obviously something that is occupying the chief's time and something that he is working, as he said, with the mayor as well as the city council to figure out some of the more specific languages, all these different variables that are involved. We went through a number of different scenarios. If you missed any portion of this conversation, we encourage you to go back to hear the chief's thoughts on just some of those, different situations that people may be placed in, business owners, as well as just the everyday citizen and what they may see and encounter on the streets with somebody that they see that may have a gun. Obviously, there is a lot to be ironed out there. And he says that the talks continue with the city council as well as internally to figure out how they are going to be managing this moving forward. One of the things that he expressed concern about is that HPD and the officers already have a lot on their plate in the things that they have to tackle on a day-to-day basis and within their scope of responsibility as officers. And adding this into that also will create more training that needs to be done and something else that the department will have to take on and have to figure out, noting that there is a lot, obviously, that these officers will need to be trained on in order to best, work through when faced with these types of situations.
Right. And, the time is the clock is ticking. He is under a mandate, of course, with the Supreme Court decision. He has to answer those nearly 600 people who have submitted permit applications as to what his decision is going to be. He did say that there will be some mental health and background checks with that permit, along with 4 hours of gun safety training to make sure that those folks understand the laws here in Hawaii, that there is no stand your ground law, for instance, and just putting them into some scenarios where he sees how fast they respond with stress when you add a gun into the mix. Of course, that is a very, a lot to think about. So it'll be very interesting to see how this goes moving forward. Also interesting because each of the counties are all facing this, and different, the different county councils are looking at how to perhaps restrict sensitive areas. There is talk perhaps of having a statewide sensitive areas law so that it would be consistent, island to island. That's something that we'll ask our guests later this month about, Ron Kochi and Scott Saiki, of course, the Senate President and Speaker of the House. Is that something the legislature could take up now that we are facing this scenario? So always great to catch up with Chief Joe Logan. We appreciate his transparency and willingness to come on. On Wednesday, we are going to be focusing on fentanyl, an important issue, especially with the holidays, more people going to parties, and we have heard a lot about fentanyl in recent months. Gary Yabuta, who is the former Maui police chief, and now he runs the Hawaii High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area. He's laser focused on fentanyl, and he's going to be talking about how it's affecting us here in Hawaii and what you can do to protect yourself and your family.
Yeah, we look forward to that conversation, as well as the rest of this month. We have a number of guests that will be joining us here on Spotlight Hawaii. We always appreciate those viewers who continue to loyally tune in and ask your questions. We look forward to another great month of conversations ahead. Until then, until Wednesday, have a great week, and we'll see you right back here at 10:30 on Wednesday for another episode of Spotlight Hawaii. Until then, take care and aloha.
Aloha.
This episode of Spotlight Hawaii is brought to you by Long's Drugs.